Hello, greetings to the Czech Republic on your celebrating of 30 years of community mental health services. Congratulations. Certainly, community mental health services are fundamental to being able to have people with mental health conditions have a good life. Because even in the best of institutions, even in places that are caring and provide for people's basic needs, it still is not the same as living in a community with families, with relationships, with friends, with full lives. It still is being restricted. It still is losing a great deal of the meaning and connectedness of life. I remember visiting in the Czech Republic a good, long-standing institution there, and I talked to a young man who said he was suicidal almost every day. And as far as I could tell, the main reason he was suicidal was because he was locked in this institution and had little chance of a future or hope or building the life that he had dreamed of when he was younger. When I asked what would make the biggest difference for him, he said having a place of his own with a key of his own to put in the door, to open it, and be his own place. That would make him feel like he was a full person. And we've certainly seen that in America when we moved from institutions to community mental health now some 50 years ago. Having said that, however, establishing community mental health centers, establishing people with serious mental illnesses in the community is really very difficult. It's very challenging in a number of ways. We originally assumed it had to do primarily with getting the people the care they needed in the community. Make sure they have medications, make sure they have treatment, make sure they have therapy in the community. And this is an issue, somewhat because people don't necessarily cooperate with treatment, but also we found it's an issue because there's many places in our country where there's very few mental health professionals who live. Very few psychiatrists or mental health professionals live in the rural or remote areas of our country, which makes it difficult for you to get treatment in these places. Beyond that, though, people needed more than just treatment to be able to have a life. They needed to be able to have help finding housing, getting money to live on, being able to connect to friends, building social skills, being able to get a job, going back to school. All these kinds of services, widely called supportive services, are essential for building the things that make a life meaningful and make a life productive. It's not the assumption of community mental health that these people will be a permanent burden and just keep them cheaply someplace hidden in a group home in our community somewhere. That's not the goal for them to be permanently dependent. Many are able to be very highly contributing, especially if they have some ability to access some education, some ability to access some employment, some artistic pursuits, some social pursuits, being able to give back to others, some spiritual things, connecting to churches and things. Being able to have these things gives your life meaningful roles, and that's how you start to really be in a community, to have roles and not just be living there, to really be included. There is also, however, the side of the community itself. What is a given community able to accept within its community? Why does it throw people out and say you must go live restricted and locked up someplace? It is not usually a medical indication for why someone needs to be locked up or put in an institution or can't live in the community. It is usually because they are in some way unacceptable to the culture of that community or the relationships within that community, so that they become refugees within their own country. This varies a lot from place to place and culture to culture of what makes it so that someone can be in the community or not be in the community. For example, in Japan, there are very, very large mental health institutions and very few people in the community because Japan has an extremely low tolerance for diversity or problems of almost any kind. For example, if your car has a dent, you can't drive it again until you get it fixed perfectly. Or if a man loses his long-standing job, he's too ashamed to go back to his family, instead lives homeless in a park because he can no longer accept that there's something wrong with him. This culture has a very low tolerance for things being wrong with you. Everyone has to be able to fit in by being acceptable and fitting the norms. On another example, In Malaysia, it's a great shame to a family to have someone with mental illness. So people tend to stay in institutions for very long periods because their family don't want to have them back out in the community to bring shame to them. So you can see in these two cultures, it would take different kinds of things to get the community to accept people back. One would have to be a higher acceptance of diversity and disability. The other one would have to be working on the lack of shame or feeling so much shame for mental illnesses. On the other hand, to give you an example, in Los Angeles where I live, we have a great deal of tolerance for people who have all kinds of different behaviors and dresses and way of being, and so there's a great number of people with mental illnesses living in our communities. However, we are a very uncharitable place, so we don't give enough resources for people to live on, so many of these people end up homeless. It's what we're willing to do or not do. Or in Pittsburgh, a number of years ago, they released all the people from a mental hospital, set them all up in the community, gave them services to follow them, and unfortunately, of the hundreds and hundreds of people they released, one person actually ended up murdering somebody. Normally, in many communities, a tragedy like this would have led to undermine the entire project and letting people be locked up all over again. In this case, however, there is a high tolerance for violence in many places in America, and this did not destroy the entire project, and it went on, and the other hundreds and hundreds of people were able to live in the community safely. Two positive examples come from Europe, in Trieste, Italy, and in Kiel, Belgium. They've had very long traditions of the community welcoming people as part of their community with serious mental illnesses, and so there's very little that mental health services have to do to supplement the community supports that already exist for people to get in the natural support to their community. It's worth looking at yourselves, the Czech Republic, say, so who are we able to tolerate within our community? What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What's changed over the 30 years? Was there different people we could tolerate then than can tolerate now? Have we changed in our acceptance and our welcoming and our tolerance in what's okay within our community, what isn't? Because it's always an ongoing effort to make more and more people be able to be in the community. It really is not an acceptable life for people to be living, even in a good institution, for the rest of their lives. We should be able to have everyone be a part of things. We should be able to make a place for everyone to be welcome. I very much commend the efforts of all you're doing in this direction to try to make this happen, and we continue to work on it in America as well. I hope you're staying well through the pandemic and not getting ill. When the pandemic ends, maybe I'll be able to come visit again. I hope things are well. Take care.